Welcome to the Cinnabar. Now, today we've got what should be kind of a fun and interesting episode for you. You see, a good friend and fellow gunsmith sent us this Colt Burgess lever action rifle receiver, and it's about one step from final polish. But during the polishing process, it developed a bit of a problem. You see, this little pony, the Rampant Colt on the side of the receiver, disappeared. And that's very common. They're a very shallow stamp, and it's the same stamp that's used both on the Burgess and the Colt Lightning rifles as well. So today we're going to show you our process to make the little pony reappear again, and it involves this little roll stamp right here. So it's not a complicated process, but it does take some finesse and some attention to detail, particularly in the setup. So stick around, this ought to be fun and interesting. Okay, so here are a couple examples of Colt Lightning rifles. Both of these are 4440s. Both of them are very high condition, although this one on the bottom, kind of mystifyingly, has flaked, much like some of the later Winchesters. But anyway, we can see the Rampant Colt here. Just like on the stamp here, it's of course a mirror image, because when we turn the stamp over, it's going to stamp just like these. One of the first things we need to decide, though, is where we stamp this on the receiver. And interestingly enough, and it's the same on Colt Burgess rifles, the Burgesses we have in the shop here are kind of low condition and it's harder to see the stamp. But we need to see where this thing goes. And if we look at the one on top here, we can see kind of, if we use the front of the trigger guard as a basis, in relation to that trigger guard, the nose is kind of in line with the trigger guard. And on this one, the tail is in line with that trigger guard. So the pony on this one is far further back than the pony on this one. So the other issue is that this one is much closer to the bottom line down here than this one. So we know that these ponies, they didn't have a really specific spot. This was a high production environment. They just rolled them in on the side of that receiver, kind of generally in the middle. So we don't have to be super critical on where we put it. So we can put it kind of where we think it looks best. And we see the same thing on the Burgess receivers, that pony's in different places on that receiver. So that makes things a little bit easier as far as lining everything up. Now, nobody alive today knows exactly how these were stamped into a receiver. Some people say that they were hand stamped in. Some people say they were roll stamped in. For me, I believe they must have been rolled in. And here's an example of a high condition, large frame Lightning rifle. And this is one that makes me believe that they were rolled in. Now, these stamps are very shallow and very wide and cover a big area, and it's almost impossible to hand stamp something like that and get it even. And we see these stamps, almost all of them are very, very even. And because they're shallow, you can usually tell if a gun's been refinished, because you can't hardly polish that receiver without taking that pony out. Now this, we can usually see just a little bit of a ghost on either side of the stamp, and this one's probably the most dramatic I've ever seen. You see those lines on either side of that stamp? To me, that's where whatever they were using to roll, they rolled off all the way across and off of the stamp on either side and rolled those in. So we're going with the roll stamp. We're gonna use this one just the way we think they did back in the old days. And of course, we could send it off to a laser engraver and have them laser engraved, but it's just not the same. Now, I really like the placement of this Rampant Colt on the receiver of this Colt Burgess baby carbine. So I've gone ahead and measured that all up and kind of traced out that same position on this receiver, and that's what we're going to shoot for. Now, we're going to use this vertical mill to roll this stamp in, and we've got a fixture of our own design here to hold the roll stamp, and then we've cut wood blocking to hold the receiver in place and keep it from slipping, and then that saves the finish. We're not going to mar it or put flat spots on pieces and whatnot. But then the next step is we need to support the inside of this receiver, because we're going to put a lot of down pressure in order to transfer that stamp onto the side of the receiver. So fortunately, the lower tang on these is right on 750 thousandths. So we just got a piece of 3/4 inch steel plate here. We cut to the right size, and the receiver is actually just a little bit, or the gap in the receiver is a little bit wider, so that when you screw everything down, it pulls into that 750. So we're going to just put a 5/1000 shim stock in there, just to maintain that little extra space, so that the lower tang can go in there without having to beat it in. Okay, so now we've got that in there. We're just going to set this in, loosen up our vise a little bit, set this in, and now we've got everything lined up here based on the top of the receiver. Let me get in a little bit closer for you. Okay, so we've got everything lined up so that the top of the receiver is against this plywood piece here. So we're lined up straight across here. We don't want any of this kind of motion. So we've got a little wooden block that we put in here, and now we're going to tighten everything up. Hold it down a little bit. Tighten up this vise. We're not going to just crank down on it. We're not going to put a lot of side thrust on this. It's really going to be straight down and then just roll. So okay, we've got everything there. Now we're going to set up and measure this to make sure that we're very flat. Remember that this stamp only goes in a few thousandths. So if we're not really level, we can be much deeper on one side than the other, or maybe even part of the stamp not even show. So it's critical that this is very, very level. To test how flat we are, we've got this dial indicator. We've got zeroed out on the lower left-hand corner. We're going to drop the table, move to each of the corners, and if we're within a few thousandths, we're good to go. You know, one of the things that most people don't realize is that receivers aren't perfectly straight, and they weren't from the factory. And of course, this one's been polished on some, so you know, we're going to get, if we're within a few thousandths corner to corner, we're good to go, and we can start stamping. Okay, so here we are with the first one, and we're with less than a thousandths difference. Okay, let's go to this other corner over here, and we are just a hair over a thousandth. So we'll drop that out and go to our last corner here. And see where we're at. Okay, so we're about a half a thousandth. Oh, actually, I'm not on the table. We're within a quarter thousandth, so we're good to go. That's better than what we could have expected. Okay, now we've got everything set up just right. We've got our pony dialed in here, and we've got it squared up off of the mill vise here, so that we're straight. Got some reference marks on the face here, because when we set that or bring that table up, it's going to be really hard to see that stamp. So we can see from the edge exactly where the ends of that stamp are, and we don't want to roll off of them. All right, now we're going to bring the mill table up till we're just touching. And there we are. Okay, we're going to zero things out here. And I'm going to bring it up another 10 thousandths. And then we'll roll it. And then we'll see how deep it is, how well it's rolled in there, and then we may go a little deeper yet. Okay, so this part probably won't be very exciting to watch, because we're going to go really slowly, and we can't really see the impression it's making until we're done, because this one is so narrow. Like if we're stamping a barrel address on a barrel that's really long, we can see that stamping as we're working. But here it's just so doggone narrow, I don't know how to get anything on camera that really shows it until we're done. Okay, so we've rolled back and forth the whole width. We're going to crank in a little more depth. And roll it again. And we feel more resistance turning the table, the travel on it by hand as we put more down pressure. And we're still fairly light now. We added another 5 thousandths. Okay, now I've got the roll moved over as far to the right as I can without coming off of it, so we can see that left-hand side of that stamp on the receiver, and it's looking really, really good. And we got it centered right into that spot that we were looking for beautifully. I may go ahead and take a couple of more bites, add a few thousandths more, but again, these are a really shallow stamp. You can't get really deep with them. All right, now we're at our final depth. I'm going to roll it back and forth one more time, and then we'll take a look and see how it looks. And we probably don't need this last one, but we're going to roll it in just for good measure. Just take a look at that. That's fantastic. So what do you say? I think it looks plumb passable compared to an original on this Colt Lightning. It does look a little deeper, but you've got to remember this still has to be finished polished, so a lot of those little edges that were raised up will go away, and it should look just almost identical to that original. So now you know when our little friend the pony disappears, how we can make him reappear again. It's not magic, just the right tools, paying a little attention to detail, and this little guy right here, and we can bring him right back to life. Well, thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Until next time, happy trails from the Cinnabar.